Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another live broadcast coming to you from Smart City, Glasgow, all the way from Scotland. And of course, we're coming to you live on the Truth Frequency Radio Network. You may also be listening to TFR on iHeartRadio, StreamLabs. So many different ways to listen to this absolutely amazing network where silence is consent. So tell everyone you know this is the place to come for all of your information, especially in these times that we're living right now. We've got a really good show lined up for today, and it's not just me here. And I was thinking about it. When you really add things up, it becomes a bit of a testosterone fest on the Kev Baker show from time to time. And there's only, now and again, I bring JoJo onto the show, and she brings on some much needed divine feminine energy. We used to have the Nano Girl would come onto the show as well. But somebody who's just recently joined the network and somebody who I've had the luck of working with closely in the background, putting together a YouTube channel, etc., is somebody called Ella. Now, Ella's going to be joining me here for round about the first hour of the show. She has to go away and take care of some business. But for anyone who doesn't know Ella, she's a radio show host, a broadcaster, human rights activist, and a leading advocate for victims of sexual assault, stalking, and both overt and covert crimes. Now, after living a glamorous life in Los Angeles and working as an executive in New York, she decided to dedicate her life to working with and fostering high-need children. Her life took a turn after experiencing predatory stalking and abuse, and after a pivotal conversation with the Nobel whistleblowers Mr. Bill Binney and Kirk Weeb. At that point in time, she felt compelled to become a radio show host and showcase modern-day heroes, whistleblowers, educators, and activists, as well as spearheading global campaigns to address victims of various crimes. Now, on her most recent show, aptly named A Good Place, Where Truth and Integrity Meet, you can hear her interview today's thought-provoking and compelling premier guests every Friday right here on TFR, www.tfrlive.com. And that is at 2 p.m. Eastern, and that is at 11 a.m. on the West Coast. And over here, it is 6 p.m. this week, and then back to 7 p.m. next week. And of course, you can also hear her over on Revolutionary Radio, and that's freedomslips.com. And that's every Tuesday, beginning at 3 p.m. on the East Coast. And don't forget to check out her brand new YouTube channel. And I'm going to drop a link for that in the chat room at tfrlive.com/chat in just a moment. I've helped put that together. Yes, it looks absolutely brilliant, even if I do say so myself. And this is where you can find A Good Place with Ella, where you listen to her previous formidable guests. Now, folks, I've checked out some of the guests. I've put together some of the video interviews that are already on that channel. Talk about big names. This is where almost the world of the mainstream has come into TFR now. And I'm liking this kind of crossover. So, Ella, it's great to have you here. And like I say,
thank you.
I needed to kind of get away from this testosterone fest that myself and Jimmy and Scott and Joe have. I know it plays in with my obvious toxic, male toxicity that I carry around with my beard and everything else. But it's great to have you here.
Well, it's great to be here, and it's nice to have my dose of you. I mean, we've gotten to know each other quite well, off air and on air as well. So, and I'm very grateful. You do an amazing job with that video and in supporting me and showing me the ropes. I really appreciate it. And and you were talking about the YouTube channel and some of my guests, it's kind of a conversion of the woo world and the mainstream world and alternative media, because so many of these mainstream guests are awake and aware and have experienced things that are eye-opening. So that's kind of where I find that convergence.
And you also work with another host here on the network, Donald Jeffries, right? A lot of your work, a lot of the interviews has been with Donald as well.
Yeah, Donald and I were introduced through a targeted individual, a victim of covert crimes, and he just adored him, his favorite author ever. He put us in, he said, you should interview him on your show. And we just hit it off. He's a really wonderful person. He truly is, and probably one of my favorite people. And one of the people that I don't know, one of the people I haven't met in person, but I just hold dear to my heart, like you. And he's just a wonderful guy. And he came on the show, on my Revolution Radio show, and he got the bug. And so he started looking around at some other options to have his own show, and he ended up here, and then he carried me over as well. So I am on both stations at this point.
You see, I find TFR in particular, it's as if it's bringing people together at this particular time, Ella. And I know you share a bit of the interest in the quantum woo that I do as well.
Oh,
it's almost as if people of the same frequency. It's almost more than a name, Truth Frequency Radio. It literally is almost what it says on the tin, because I find, in my personal experience anyway, the people that I've come across here through TFR, these are the people that you have that kind of feeling you've known them all your life. And to meet so many people in one location that you can have that feeling, that kind of energetic bond with, that goes way beyond a statistical anomaly. There's something going on where people are gravitating towards each other.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I was this guy last night, right before I fell asleep. He sent me a message on LinkedIn, and he gets into the woo as well, the mathematical aspects of it. And it made me think, I was falling asleep thinking about, he said, well, they're wrong in some of these mathematical equations. It's not like 3.333. I might have the number wrong. That makes up beings or electrical beings. Electricity, he said, is electromagnetic electricity. So basically, we're not just electric beings. He believes we're electromagnetic beings. And that, because we're magnets, we're kind of pulling towards everything we think about unconsciously. So it was really fascinating. And I got to think about that right before I went to bed.
It's bizarre. You don't even know this, but after you leave today, there's a strong possibility I'm going to be talking about quantum fields. And a lot of that is derived out of the work of Faraday when he was looking at the electromagnetic field. So a bit of a synchronicity there, yes. But today, we've got something quite serious to get into to start with here, Ella. And I like to have a laugh and I like to have a joke. Everyone knows that. If you tune into the Kev Baker show, it's how I like to roll, even on some of the most serious topics. However, it's hard to laugh and joke about what's happening in the EU with Article 13. We're literally talking about the end of the way that we've always been able to share internet or information on the internet. And all of that is about to change forever as we know it. We're used to the free exchange of information, ideas, links, extracts from stories, etc., etc., images, you name it. We're used to sharing that on social media, sending it here, there, everywhere. But for how much longer? Because like I say, over here in the EU, we've had Article 11 and Article 13 pass its second last hurdle. That's right, there's one more opportunity for us to put the blocks on this. And how we do that, I think the only thing we can do is continue to raise our voice about this subject that, like I say, is set to impact us all. Now, to boil it all down, Article 11 is basically what you'll probably have heard been referred to as the link tax. And this is where, when it comes to smaller, independent media, such as myself, people out there, with a blog, a little website, trying to raise the alarm, trying to cover stories that might be in the mainstream out there in the media, that is all going to come to an end, because basically, if you want to share links to a mainstream article, you're going to have to seek permission, seek a license from that very company for you to do that. Now, I imagine they'll make this so expensive that basically only the big media companies will be able to actually pay it. Now, I'm sorry if I sounded distracted there. There was something going on Skype. I'm not sure what was going on. But yeah, it's one of these things, Ella. Skype just likes to do these crazy things. But then when it comes to Article 13, this is where we have, in my opinion, the closing down of a lot of the content creators that in the EU right now, because basically tech companies are going to be liable for any copyrighted content that may end up on their platform. Now, what that means is me making a video, me doing a show like this that I intend to share on YouTube, for example. You know, for me to cover a story from the Daily Mail and to tell you to go and check that out, link to it, read the first couple of paragraphs from it, like I typically do, that will no longer be allowed. Now, there's one more hurdle for all of this to pass, like I say. It's got to go to the Council of the European Union, and that's where all the individual companies sit down and they basically rubber stamp it. Now, it's not expected to have any problems at that point. There is one potential, Germany, that they're kind of on the fence, but it's expected to go through. So between now and April the 9th, we have to make our voices heard, because after that, it's going to be a lot harder for us to share information. And I know people will say, well, it doesn't affect us. We're in America, or we're in Australia, or we're wherever. We're outside the EU, right? Or maybe, Kev, you're getting a bit too far ahead of yourself because of Brexit, things like that. You know, it's not really going to impact you. Oh, it will. It truly, truly will, because this is going to be the model of the internet moving forward. And isn't it interesting how all of this is coming at a time when the EU itself is in trouble? More and more people speaking out about the fact that it's a broken system, that they don't want their countries to be participating in it. So the EU, at the time when people are using the internet to share information, to raise awareness, to activate protests around Europe, here they are coming down and hammering down on the sharing of information. You see, they say it's under the guise of protecting the copyright owners, the content creators, the ones that maybe are losing out on a bit of advertising revenue. And don't get me wrong, I get that we need to update the copyright laws in this digital age. They're outdated now. However, this is a Trojan horse. They can shout about copyright all they like, but in the end of the day, this is an authoritarian European Union, an unelected bunch of criminals at the very top end of it who are imposing these harsh new laws. So what happens is on April the 9th, if it does go through, countries then have 2 years to write legislation that make their copyright laws Article 11 and Article 13 compliant. But it leaves companies like YouTube in a position where they're going to have to employ really strict, harsh filters on any content being uploaded to their site, because they're not going to be able to take the risk that at a later stage it does become, you know, an issue that there's content on there somebody uploaded, and it won't be the person that uploaded it that's in trouble, you see. They're going after the tech companies. So the best way for the tech companies to deal with that, and I'll give YouTube their credit, they've been quite vocal, they've been trying to lobby the people over there to get changes made. They did get some of the language watered down, but not entirely. But what it'll result in is when you're uploading content, most of the time in the EU, I envisage us being told, this is a no-go. This contains potentially copyrighted material. So it's going to be basically one man and his camera. You won't be able to show images. You won't be able to show any kind of news stories. You won't be able to play clips of videos, because we're not going to be able to afford or have the time to go out and seek the licenses to use that content. And before long, what happens, Ella, is that it's only the big companies that will be using YouTube. They'll have the money to buy all of the licenses to use copyrighted material. It'll be the end of independent media doing things the way we do it. And yeah, as you can see, I think this is a lot more to do with the exchange of information as opposed to protecting those copyright holders that they say they're helping.
You know, it's outrageous. But with that happening, I hope they're going to lose a lot of their devoted users and followers, because this is kind of like the rogue element of media. We don't have to know someone to to make it in the business of information. You don't have to, you just get up there and your talent just kind of rises to its own accord. You don't need an agent. You don't have to, like I said, you don't have to hobnob. You don't have to be approved by producers. It's just you go out there and it's just that it's you in the audience and you and the people. And if they like you, you do well. If you have great information, you do well. And that's the bottom line is talent and just likability, information. It's authentic. It's not no one is curtailing our message on YouTube. There's no one telling us and trying to format our messages, which TFR doesn't do that. So that's really wonderful. But YouTube has been such a great place for me and to get information and to share information. And it's really sad. And when I was thinking about it when you were talking about it on your show yesterday, it's kind of strange because we can't even share information. Isn't that why they do the information in the first place? Someone puts out news information to share.
You see, it doesn't even make sense, Ella, when you think about it, right? Because the likes of Facebook, they're going to have to pay a fee so that they can keep operating the way they do, where you see the box where the link for the story comes up and things like that. And here now we have basically what company in the world would have a complaint about, say, Facebook sharing a link to their information when it's inevitably going to drive traffic to their internet website in the first place.
I know.
You see, it doesn't make sense. You see, this is why you have to step back and go, well, what's really going on here then? And it's to stem the flow of information. There can be no other way of looking at this. And again, I hold my hands up. I mean, I get that there is real kind of copyright issues out there where people have had material ripped off. The wrong people have had ad money paid to them, Ella, on the back of work that somebody else has done. And yeah, we need to kind of combat that. We need to fix that. However, this isn't a fix to that. This has nothing to do with that when you look at the bigger picture.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And Tim Berners-Lee,
crazy.
the guy who he invented the internet, I mean, he's kind of throwing his hands up in the air going, why? You know, the internet's about the exchange of ideas. It's about the exchanging of links. So yeah, this is the EU for you. And let's look at who is set to benefit from this, because this is where it gets a little bit kind of weird, because here's YouTube. And I've definitely been very vocal in my support of the way they've tackled this. They gave content creators packages with all the kind of graphics and logos and everything they needed to go out and make their own videos and protest. However, right now, Google have a content or a copyright recognition system that they spent $100 million on, Ella. And 9,000 broadcasters, artists, singers, actors, studios, you name it, they already pay Google to use this so that they can kind of combat people uploading and ripping off their stuff. So with this new law that's coming into effect, Google, who own YouTube, are set to make an absolute fortune, because websites out there are going to have to pay for these filters that's going to recognize any copyrighted material. So here's Google. They've got the perfect thing for people. So even though they might be fighting it for us content creators in one hand, they're going to be making a big profit selling this content recognition system that they've already spent $100 million on developing, which is exactly what websites are going to have to use to flag content when it's uploaded to the internet. Clever, eh?
It's just, I'm kind of speechless, actually.
You see, that's the way these big tech corporations roll. You know, never let a good crisis go to waste. So on one hand, yeah, it's going to change YouTube, and they make out that they're kind of helping us content creators. But the parent
We need to come up with something else. We need to have our own, something like a Google, and then we need to have our own YouTube type streaming service.
You see, this is the thing, right?
We have to find an alternative.
And I've heard this all the time. But the cold, hard kind of truth is, and the reality is that eyes are on YouTube. And that's where really the main battlefield is. And we've seen other websites pop up, and they have tried to combat Google and YouTube. But when they get to a certain level, either, you know, that they sell out to advertisers and then there's pressures on them, or Google just buy them up. They just swallow them up. And it's hard for any other company out there to really take off without it becoming an echo chamber, because we're trying to reach more and more people. Yeah, it's great that we can have other alternative sites where we might not get harmed as much, but these websites now are going to be liable under Article 13. We've seen places like Gab recently. You know, it was a rival to Twitter. I mean, they're going to be hit by Article 13 now. So even any rivals, Ella, that start to spring up now, they're going to have to probably pay this heinous license fee that the smaller fish won't be able to afford. But we can only wait to see how it plays out. You know, it might not happen overnight because it takes 2 years for the individual countries to come up with their own legislation. And it could be the other way, where we wake up one morning and you go to watch Kev Baker over in America and it says, nah, the EU's blocked this content. He's a wronging, that guy. You can't be watching him. You know, so who knows how it plays out?
Yeah, we'll have to just see. It's just crazy. I'm just so afraid. And then even the thing on YouTube, you know, I'm just beside myself that they're telling us like what our content is and trying to give it a different spin, their opinion. Like, remember on Alana Freeland on my other YouTube channel, I interviewed her, wonderful lady, just brilliant, wonderful person. I know you interviewed
I love
her
Ilana.
yourself.
Yeah,
Oh, I love her.
yeah.
And so I get this flag on there, and they put a tag on there explaining what they want us to think chemtrails are. And they made a reference to contrails, and I couldn't believe it. They're basically trying to, I don't know, trying to discredit our message.
Yeah,
It was very upsetting.
It's, you know, the same when you visit my favourite news organisation. I mean, obviously, you know, I'm a Russian agent, Ella. I go and visit.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah, I go and visit Putin all the time. We kick about in Red Square and things. But when you go to watch Russia Today, same information box comes up and it says, please be aware that Russia Today is either partly or fully funded by the Russian state. But yet when you go to CNN, it doesn't come up there that, you know, propaganda, the kind of Propaganda Act was repealed by Obama back in 2014. So it should really make you aware when you're watching media out of the US that it's used for propaganda purposes. But of course, no, they're very selective. And it happens on moon stories as well. If you go and look at something to do with the moon, even if you're not looking for moon hoax stuff, it'll still tell you that the moon landing was exactly how NASA said it was. Now, whether it was or not, that's not the point, but they're still telling people how to think. So, yeah, I remember it really angered you the first time it came up under one of your videos. And you've been accused of cyberbullying as well, but from YouTube, have you not?
No, we were talking about targeting and different things, and harassment, and just how the algorithm, it's not a very smart algorithm. It's finding keywords, it's taking it out of context. And that's very upsetting. And the shadow banning, and also making sure that your type of content only reaches people with similar interests, when the whole idea is to branch out upon our own audience. So to educate people, or to give them the opportunity to hear this side, to hear this version, to know about this information that maybe they've never heard of. So yeah, I'm up in arms about it constantly.
No, and you know, think about that, because we've both fallen victim to that algorithm in recent months. Other hosts on the network have fallen victim to the YouTube algorithm. And now we're looking at the dawn of a new age of upload filters. And there's going to be no compassion. There'll be no way for it to discern what is copyrighted, what isn't copyrighted, what may be fair use, what is fair use. So this is going to get even harder for us now. We're already having to fight against algorithms that aren't quite working right. And now even the uploading of a video, Ella. I mean, if you're out walking in the park and it just so happens to resemble some park that's in a movie, that bit of footage just looks kind of the same to the algorithm, you won't even be able to upload that because, well, that could potentially be copyrighted material. You can see how it's really easy for them then to really whittle out who does upload and who doesn't upload.
And just the other day, remember I told you there was some kind of flag or comment about I was using copyrighted music, or some music that Chris had chosen from Truth Frequency Radio, and I don't even think it's copyrighted. And I thought the law was you can play just about any bit of music for 30 seconds legally. That's how they sample music. So I'm very confused by all of this.
And this is a law that's changing. And I've been guilty in the past of referring to fair use law. Fair use law comes out of Cornell University. So what the hell am I talking about fair use for? I'm in Britain. If I end up in a court over anything in YouTube, I don't think the judge is going to be too interested when I say, well, fair use out of Cornell University. Don't think American law will probably fly for me when I'm in that magistrate's court over here. But hey, just saying, like I say, I'll make fun of myself because I've still got it copy and pasted into my description on YouTube. We'll be back on the other side, folks. Save your internet. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Cam Baker Show.
Standing tall in the face of tyranny, and that tyranny is coming out of the EU when it comes to the internet. Article 11, Article 13. Tell everyone about what's going on because things are set to change forever. And we were talking about this in the first segment of the show. And like I say, this truly is one of the most important things out there right now. From time to time, we've raised it here on the show. In the past, I probably didn't pay it enough attention as we could have. We first started talking about it way back in September last year. We really started to highlight it because we were wondering if that played a part in when I got demonetized, because they started to play about with the algorithms at YouTube. They started to preempt what was going to be coming in the future with Article 13. And the algorithms are one thing. These content filters that we're having to fight with to upload stuff, this is going to be another thing altogether. And don't forget, folks, it's not just YouTube. I talk about it from a YouTube perspective because I'm a YouTuber. This is the entire internet. The entire internet. Websites like Drudge. Links to all these mainstream stories, all these stories from alternative sites, link tax. So sites like that, these news aggregate sites that we all like to go to, even Google News Aggregate, they're talking about closing down over here in the EU. Just closing down. Too much hassle, Ella. So, like I say, the internet is set to be changing forever. I'm not sure. I would love to have the solution, Ella. I really would. And so many people were out protesting before all of this went down. But it's the EU. They're the most tyrannical group of non-elected fools in the world. And part of this thing that you call the New World Order, this is a big part of it. So for us to change this now, maybe a bit late, but we have to raise awareness. We have to think of ways around it. And this is the way the internet's going. It's getting smaller and smaller. It's getting like China.
Yeah, it is. I just don't understand. This is supposed to be information. I think of, like I said, we were talking earlier, and it's just stuck in my head how, don't they want us to share their information? It's doing them a favor. So I'm really confused. I guess, if there's a CNN article or a BBC article and we want to share it, I mean, kudos, we're helping them.
That's what you would think, right? That's what you would think. It's absolute lunacy, and that's why there's something more going on here. And again, it's about the exchange of information. And over in China, they've now started going after people with VPNs. That's the virtual private networks that you can use to get around these kind of geographical IP bans, Ella. And I expect them to come out with legislation over here in the EU to match that soon, because that's obviously one way we can get around these kind of things. And that virtual private network, they want to see everything we're doing. So the virtual private network flies in the face of that. And in the next couple of months, that's what you'll see happening here. We're following the Chinese model, especially when it comes to this kind of censorship. But I want to speak to you before I let you shoot off and get about your day. I want to thank you first for coming along, bringing some much-needed feminine energy to the man cave here. But your show on the network here, talk to us about that, because, sometimes people might think you just concentrate on targeted individuals because they've heard you talking about that topic so much in the past, Ella. But I've been blown away by the wide range of people you talk to, and talk about big names from the world of politics. You've got the guy that was the Waco negotiator as well. You spoke to him. Some really cool guests on there. So talk to us about that.
He's amazing. He's my favorite guest today. He's legendary actor, activist. And, I try to pick people who are worth somebody with some character. They don't have to be perfect. I don't care about that. Just they have they have good intention for the world. They're trying to do their small part to make a difference, and that's what's important to me. And just trying to uncover, get people who have information that should be shared that maybe isn't. And so that's really important to me. And a lot of them just have stories, fascinating stories, and there's always some kind of takeaway. They're always inspiring. Every time you leave one of my shows, I hope you learn something and feel um, energized to do something, because that's kind of the whole goal of everything. We're all doing our part, and as hosts, we're not making. I don't know any radio hosts who make a lot of money, and many of us barely can get by. And we do it because this is what we feel compelled to do. This is what we love, and this is our part by sharing information. Although, as we were discussing earlier, it's getting harder and harder to do that. So it's really important that we support each other, and it's important to get the caliber of people we have coming on and being able to share them on YouTube if things go well. And, everyone can check it out. It's A Good Place. And you can look it up on YouTube, A Good Place with Ella. And those are my interviews, as well as we mentioned here on TFR. I'm going to be here on Friday. And I have a website coming as well. It's going to be agoodplacewithella.com. We're still working on it. And, Kevin, I thank you so much, because you've taken me under your wing and taught me a thing or two, and I really appreciate it. And if you're listening to Kev, you're listening to a great man. You really are. He's just an astounding human being. He's very humble. You're fun. You're informed. You're quick. You're intelligent. You're poetic.
You need to stop that. You be giving me a big head. People will start talking. I know what the TFR family are like. That Joe Joseph, he's got a polluted mind. So, I definitely need to stop all that. No, I'm only busting your chops. And I really like hanging out with you. You really do fit into the TFR family. And we're certainly going to have a lot more shows on here where we can hang out, because some weeks I don't book any guests and I just like to hang out with friends, and we talk about some of the craziness going on in the world. And the thing is, right, you're into all of the same quantum kind of stuff that I'm into, so we can geek out on here from time to time as well.
Yep, I love that. A lot of woo.
And it's so easy for me to trigger you from time to time. I told you I wouldn't trigger you tonight. I've done really well, Ella. I resisted the temptation. I hope you're proud of me.
No, it's fine, because, I see both sides. I've trained myself to look at both sides of everything. And he's joshing with me because this morning he went on about Trump, because I live in Crazy Land, USA. It's also known as Trumplandia, and
Orange man bad.
So it's quite interesting times, and what it's doing is showing people's true colors. Somehow, just having this man sitting in that seat at the White House has brought out parts of people that we didn't know existed. Like, I didn't know race. I have to thank Donald Trump, because I didn't know racism still was as prevalent as it really is. And I didn't know chauvinism was still at hand. And I didn't know there's so many things that are coming to the surface. All this, for years, it's just been quiet and calm. And we had Obama, he's a black man, as our president. So I actually thought there was really hardly any racism going on, other than some, America's huge. The South is its own little entity in its own world. And so I knew that it was still somewhat there. And then just having him as president, so many things have come out. There's so much honesty and truth is coming out of people that we just haven't seen, because it was just kind of sequestered somewhere. So I have to thank him for that. And he is not part of the establishment. And I'm going to thank him for that as well.
No, we do. We like to have a little laugh off air. And you know me, folks, you know how I roll. It's what I do on Twitter. It's what I do on Facebook. And I just like a laugh and a little joke. And what's good is we can still come back together at the end of it. And it doesn't cause us any kind of rift in the friendship, even when
Not at all.
Even when I laugh about Manshell, that doesn't anger you either.
I love me some Michelle. I'll take Michelle any day. But anyways, to get back to Donald, do I think that he is a heartwarming, caring, empathetic, altruistic human being? F no. But do I think he's like a punk rocker style president? Heck yeah, I do. And I want to see what happens, and I want to see what he can do. He definitely is shaking things up. In every way, on every level. It's just really interesting to see the dynamics that are occurring in our country. But also, all these women are coming forward. It's just like in reaction to Donald Trump, we have a slew of women running for president. He doesn't, I don't know, he just kind of doesn't sit well with a lot of women for obvious reasons, I mean, at the beginning of his race, they were talking, we heard that clip about him putting I can't even say it, I can't even say it on air.
Exactly.
He said some things. He said some things.
Orange man bad.
Orange man bad. Naughty, naughty. So anyways, well, Kev, I just want to say thank you for having me on. And
No.
next time, get Jimmy on. I want to be here with you and Jimmy.
Oh, no doubt Jimmy will probably roll up in the second part of the show here. Jimmy's class, and he is a live wire. I think Jimmy lives in multiple dimensions at once, and that's something we can get into.
Does.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will let you depart through a portal from this dimension to the next.
Thank you.
And
okay, well, I'll see you soon on the other side.
Absolutely. You take care, Ella.
Thanks,
and I urge everyone out there, please check out Ella's show. You can catch it right here on tfrlive.com every Friday, and it starts at 11 a.m. in the morning on the West Coast. That's 2 p.m. on the East Coast. And then over here in the UK, it's 6 o'clock this week, because remember, our clocks still have to be adjusted. Then it goes back to its normal time of 7 p.m. next week. And that's right, folks. The Kev Baker show will go back to its normal time of 1 hour later next week as well. So please, people will just be getting used to tuning in to that earlier time of 9 o'clock. And then all of a sudden we're going to go back to normal. And you just know it's going to take a couple of weeks for everyone to get back on board with what's happening there. So today we've been talking about Article 11. And I'm sure all of you by now, you have all heard about it. You're all aware of it. And, we're all trying to share the news, raise awareness. And I'm sure most of the shows here on TFR, if not all of the shows here on TFR, will be adding to the hashtag saveyourinternet information out there. This is our internet, and they're trying to change the way that we use it. Now, obviously, Brexit rolling on over here in the UK. That's big news. And Theresa May, the last I heard, and this is how interested I am in the whole political scene over here in the UK. I'm going to dig it up right now. But I believe Theresa May has agreed to stand down, but it'll be like in the near future. So I'm just going to dig that up to see what's happening. And it says here she might not go anytime soon. The PM announcing her departure, if the Brexit deal passes, might mean Labour votes do not materialise to the degree required. So we don't even know what's happening there, right? And at the same time as that's going on, the EU, this is how much they're having a laugh, but they're saying that they could actually delay Brexit. Not us. To hell with what we voted for and leaving the EU and all these crazy kind of laws behind. No. They say that they could delay Brexit until, get this, and this is where they show that they really are laughing at us, April Fool's Day in 2020. And this is as Donald Tusk begs fellow leaders for a long delay so that the UK can, get this, rethink its strategy. Or in other words, vote the way that we were meant to vote, i.e. stay in the EU, or just to hell with the way we voted altogether, and they'll do what they want. Any which way you look at it, I think myself and Christopher Everard, who were amongst the first to be saying this, Brexit will never, ever be allowed to happen. I think that's all kind of panning out now. We can all see that. And don't be going thinking it's all Theresa May's fault, or it's all that one's fault, or somebody else's fault, because they're all puppets. It's the one thing over the years doing all of these shows that becomes clearer and clearer and clearer. Usually subjects we look at, you find there's more and more questions to be answered. But the more you look at politics and the way that it works, and every 4 or 5 years when the cycle changes and you get the other half going into power and vice versa, you see absolutely that there's no difference between any of them. None of them. So Britain leaving the New World Order, EU superstate, didn't take a rocket scientist to work out that was never going to be allowed to happen. Now, what happens with Article 11, Article 13? Well, I believe, it still applies to us. And it still will apply to us for about 12 months or whatever after we leave, if we leave, whatever happens with Brexit. We'll try and keep on top of it on here for as long as we can talk about it. I'll probably just have to really start, like I was joking last night, say I meet somebody in the street and it's like I've been passed this rumour, because I won't be able to tell you I'm reading something from X, Y or Z website. without me first going and asking X, Y, or Z website if I can have a license to do so. And do you think it's going to be like a fiver, £10 for a license? No. They're going to make it to the point where smaller websites, smaller content creators were priced out the game. And very soon it'll just be, Kev in front of a curtain and that's it. None of the snazzy graphics we've been seeing lately on the live streams, nothing like that. Probably won't even be able to use a font for Photoshop. Why? Because, somebody owns the copyright for that. And unless I've gone and sought out the permissions to use that on a commercial basis to show publicly, then there you go. You see? Content filter, no uploady. Change days, absolutely change days now. You can let me know what you think about this in the chat room. Or we're going to open up the phones as well, folks. That's what I'm going to do. You can have your say on Article 13. I'm just looking. Somebody's message there. Hang on. How unprofessional of me answering a message while I'm on air. But it was Scotty Lopez, ladies and gents. Hopefully Scotty will come and hang out with us. He's getting back to me now. But oh, come on, Kev. What are you talking about? Not today, bro. That means Scotty is fully baked right now. So I'll go and dig up now. What story was it I was going to dig up there, folks? It's totally gone out of my head. You see, this is what's going to happen now. Where are we? Yep, it's gone. That's what I was going to do. I remember now. I was going to bring the phones on, right? So what I'll do is I will connect the phones here at the network, and then I will give you the number you need to phone into the show. Now, I'd really like to get your thoughts on Article 13 or anything else that's going on in the world right now. Remember, I'm not very political minded, so I hate on all of them. So probably not the best guy to ask about geopolitics, stuff like that. But definitely Article 13. I'd like to know what your thoughts are on this bill that is set to change the internet. So give me 2 seconds here. Just need to add this in. By the power of technology. There we go. Okay, so if you want to call into the Kev Baker Show today, get a pen, get a bit of paper ready. All you have to do is dial this number. It is, if you're in the US, 213-233-3998. That's 213-233-3998. If you're over here in the UK, it's 0044-203-393-2871. That's 0044-203-393-2871. So yes, phone in. Give me your thoughts on what you think's going on with Article 13. How do you think it's set to change things? We've got YouTube saying if you're outside of the EU, don't be surprised if you wake up one morning and you don't see Kev Baker anymore. Well, they didn't say it quite like that, but you get the idea. Maybe you'll go over onto one of your favourite websites. You'll be looking for some kind of news to peruse, drudge, something like that. Gone. Even your independent media websites, the ones that use bits of stories. I've done it myself. You quote an article that's online so you can add commentary to it, so you can discuss it, so you can use it as an example. No, all of that will be gone. Link taxed up. A tax, a charge to share information, literally. And all this at a time when Mark Zuckerberg's talking about changing the face of Facebook. Make it all end-to-end encryption and all cutesy-cozy where nobody can see what you're doing. All of it links together, folks. Absolutely all of it. And something else that links into it is that Chinese credit social scoring system. And this absolutely ties in with what we're talking about. I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to talk about this just now because I've seen a story today. And I will read this story while I'm still allowed to, I suppose, if I can find it. And isn't that typical? Just when you're about to bring up a story, it doesn't actually come up. Where is it? Here we go. See if that's it. Here we go. China's social credit system stopped millions of people from buying travel tickets. And it says China blocked millions of would-be travellers from purchasing plane or train tickets last year as part of its social credit system, according to Associated Press. The Chinese courts banned people from buying flights 17.5 million times and train tickets 5.5 million times in 2018, according to the National Public Credit Information Centre. Now, the individuals attempting to make the purchases were stopped because they had been blacklisted for social credit offences. The AP reports that 128 people were prevented from leaving the country last year because of unpaid taxes. The centre's report said authorities collected over 14 million data points on, get this, untrustworthy conduct last year. How Orwellian does that sound? That does. If Orwell was writing another book today, that's definitely one term that would make the final cut. It says examples include unpaid loans and false advertising. So the social credit scoring system was launched in 2014 and is currently being piloted by local authorities around China. The system is set to be rolled out nationwide by 2020, giving all citizens and companies a personalised score. Its aim is to encourage trustworthy behaviour through a mix of penalties and rewards. Talk about dog training, man. Offences can include failure to pay taxes or fines, or taking drugs. Penalties include restrictions on travel, business, or access to education. They cut off your ability to learn. Wow. Companies can lose access to bank loans or be dropped from government contracts. The oft-repeated slogan for the scheme, quote, once you lose trust, you will face restrictions everywhere. So in the West, the system is highly controversial and often portrayed as an AI-powered surveillance regime that violates human rights. But is it as Orwellian as it sounds? The South China Morning Post recently reported it has been welcomed by many citizens as a way to crack down on fraud and public health failures. Well, that's not really a fair test, is it? Well, why isn't it a fair test, Kev? Well, everyone's too scared to give their honest opinion because it's going to violate one of these kind of algorithms, and their untrustworthy factor is going to be knocked down a peg or two. If they say it's not working, the chances are they're not going to be travelling anywhere. You know, if they want to go to college or university later on in life, it's going to be hard to find somebody that's going to criticise this system in the first place, is it? So I don't think we can really read too much into that report by the South China Sun or whatever it was that was talking about it. And everything that we were talking about with Article 13, etc., all of that fits in with what's going on in China. All of that fits in with the changes that Mark Zuckerberg was talking about as well over on Facebook. You know, we've also seen a big change recently. A good example of it was when the New Zealand incident took place and how YouTube in particular were really the algorithm. Any mention of that, it was flagging the video. It wasn't coming up on people's feeds. They were really hard, you know, censoring, coming down really hard, authoritarian-like when it came to people covering the New Zealand shooting. Now, that's another kind of incident that they can probably use in the near future to restrict more of our rights, just because they can. That's not getting into the finer details of what did or didn't happen at New Zealand, but it's certainly an event in the live streaming aspect of that they're going to be able to, again, close down little parts of the internet. Said for some time, you must remember me saying it feels like the internet's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Do you see it now? You know, it was just at the start, if the walls were moving in on us, it was going that slowly, it was hard to perceive. You couldn't really tell if the walls were moving or not, but now when you look around, the walls are right there. They're closing in all of the time. And the surveillance aspect to it, the control side of it, with the 5G rolling out as well, we can see how things are all starting to take shape. All the kind of things that we warned about in the past, you know, all starting to come home to roost. So yeah, hashtag save your internet. We're almost out for the first hour. Remember, I'm opening up the phones. so that you can talk about your thoughts on Article 13. And if you want to phone me and speak to the Kev Baker Show, it is 213-233-3998. That is 213-233-3998. If you're in the UK, slightly different, it's 0044-203-393-2871. That's 0044-203-393-2871. So in the second part of the show, I'll keep the phones open. Hopefully somebody will be brave enough to call in to the Kev Baker Show. You can hang out here in the virtual studio with me. We can talk about Article 13. We can get into whatever you want, within reason, obviously. If not, I'll have another couple of stories for us to get into. I'm sure there's some AI stuff kicking about. There's definitely some quantum stuff kicking about. And D-Wave. Yes, D-Wave. Actually, we can connect to the EU and all the stuff we've been talking about earlier as well. How in hell's name is Kev going to connect D-Wave to all of this? Well, you'll have to join me after the break for hour number 2 right here on the Kev Baker Show, because that's how we roll. Don't forget, coming up after today's show, TFR never stops. Lucky and Dr. Brooks Agnew, they'll be on Quantum Connections straight after KBS, so don't go anywhere. I'm going to go and make myself a quick cup of coffee. I urge you to go and get yourself a quick beverage, maybe a little alcoholic one. Who knows? If it is, cheers. But I'll be back after these short messages. Welcome back. Hour number 2 on today's Kev Baker Show right here on TFRlive.com. Remember, I want you to call in with your thoughts on Article 13, whether you're in the EU or outside the EU. Matters not, because it's set to affect us all. So please phone into the virtual studio here where I like to hang out every day on the following numbers. You ready? If you're in the US, it's 213-233-3998. That's 213-233-3998. If you're over in Great Britain, yes, it is 0044-203-393-2871. 0044-203-393-2871. In the first part of the show, I was hanging out with my good friend Ella, who's got a show here on the network every Friday. And behind the scenes, when we're working together on the YouTube and things, you know what I'm like, folks. I'm bad. I'm naughty. I like to trigger people. And today we were talking about Russian collusion, and I was kind of partaking in my guilty pleasure, triggering Ella just a little. She took it well. And of course, we remain friends on the other side, and it's always important to do that, especially when you're just winding people up, right? But yesterday on the show, I was talking with Scott about Russian collusion, and we were laughing and joking about how they just can't let it go. And even despite the fact now, after 500 people were, kind of spoken to, all of the investigation that went on, all of the millions of dollars that they poured into this Mueller investigation, blah, blah, blah. Inevitably, like we'd been saying all along, no Russian collusion. But the mainstream media, they won't let it go. They just won't let it go. And the prime example of that today, not from the American media, but actually from the UK media, if you can believe that. And Sky News, no less. They're the ones that were making me giggle today, because this is an article by somebody called Deborah Haynes. And Deborah, I just don't think you've got a sense of humour. I truly don't. And I'll show that in just a second, because she's utterly convinced that there's Russians around every corner. Not only did they influence the American elections, no. They must have had a part to play in the Brexit referendum as well. But just get a load of this opening couple of paragraphs, because again, Article 13, I can't really read too much of it, right? I'm not a signed up kind of puppet for Sky News. I certainly can't be looking at this kind of stuff. I can't be telling you about this dangerous information out of the EU. Shh. It says here, get a load of what Deborah has to say. Nigel Farage, we all know who Nigel Farage was. He was the ex-leader of the UKIP party, good friend of Donald Trump, somebody that's a real thorn in the side of the EU, led the Brexit kind of shenanigans. So he claimed Russian collusion when it appeared that a number of signatories to a parliamentary petition calling for the government to stop Brexit came from outside the UK. Now, it's unclear whether the UKIP or the former UKIP leader genuinely believes this, or was simply conveniently drawing on an issue, Kremlin interference in Western democracies, many observers suspect played a part in the Brexit referendum, and he and fellow Brexiteers, such as Aaron Banks, won. Now let me pause there. Because what Nigel Farage was doing was he was pulling the P. He was having a laugh. He was making light and making fun of the fact that that was the way the mainstream media act to anything. That it must be Russian collusion. There must be Russian agents around every corner. You know, they're trying to destroy Western democracy. You know, in reality, all countries are probably hacking everyone else's elections. So I think, Deborah, you kind of missed the joke here. And it kind of proves the point that you've been brainwashed into this idea that Russia are to blame for Donald Trump being in power. Despite the fact we've had the investigation now, and it led to nothing. Because it says down here, it says either way, Mr. Farage's remark on his Twitter account is a reminder of the threat to the democracy posed by hostile states that use websites and social media platforms such as Twitter and Facebook as a weapon by exploiting existing divisions in democratic societies. It is a profoundly serious challenge, and one that Theresa May and her government do not appear in public, at least, to be given much thought to, particularly in the context of Brexit. And that's because Vladimir Putin had nothing to do with Brexit. The people of Britain are fed up with the EU. Vladimir Putin only has to let the EU be the EU for the EU to shoot itself in the foot. You know, the best form of propaganda as well is sometimes just letting people see the truth. And when you look at the truth of the EU, is it any wonder that countries like Britain said no more? And what really irks me about all of this is that we had an opportunity to be really a domino, the first domino. Because other countries outside of the EU, if we'd handled this right and just done what the people wanted and got the hell out of there, no messing around, we'll sort things on the other side, would have been fine. And other countries would have gone, well, look, the sky didn't fall for the British people. Cows didn't stop producing milk, you know. Roads didn't stop working. People still got their medicine that they need. All the scare tactics didn't come to light. We could have been the first domino in many to bring down the EU. But no. To hell with what the people wanted. It can't be that the British people wanted that. No, it had to be Vladimir Putin that was encouraging it all. Because, you know, us British people, we surely couldn't have made up our own minds that it was the wrong thing that we wanted out, right? And like I say, Vladimir Putin and the Russian collusion, we've just had the report in. They found nothing. And yet they're still citing that as evidence that Russia are involved in elections worldwide, when in reality, the UK and the US and all the other countries around the world, they're all at it. And it talks there about, you know, using Facebook and Twitter as a means to influence people. Facebook and Twitter influence people by definition. Look at their own admissions about when they've, you know, skewed people's news feeds to put them in one mood or another, to analyse how they feel after they show them one piece of information over another piece of information. So to talk about how, you know, it's disgusting how countries would use these platforms to influence people, the platforms themselves are influencing people. And aren't they really getting involved in election meddling when, no matter what side of the aisle you come from, if you still buy into the left-right paradigm, it should worry you that either side gets silenced, right? Because that by definition has to be meddling, right? If you cut down or kind of, you know, throttle back on the message of one side as opposed to the other, then you are influencing things. You're having a direct role in what people are subjected to, the information that they're getting given. So the platforms themselves, Zuckerberg's algorithms, are a worse threat to democracy than any Russian bot was back in the 2016 election. Absolutely. And if you're looking for the reason why so many Americans voted for Donald Trump, just look at who he was up against. I reckon, and I've never been in the political game, but I reckon I could have run a successful campaign for Beelzebub himself. You could have run any level of evil against Hillary Clinton, and it still wouldn't have been as bad as Hillary Clinton. You get me? Whether it was Donald Trump, whether it was The Rock, whether it was X, Y, or Z, they were always going to beat her. People just didn't want her. And where would we be now if it had been her? Holy begoli, you know? Probably at war with Russia by now. Maybe. Maybe. You know how she likes to go to countries and laugh about when leaders get assassinated and things? Libya. Just saying, folks. But I'll get off my high horse. We'll see if anyone's on the phone lines. Maybe there is. Yes, there is. There's somebody on the phone lines and they're calling from area code 515. John, welcome to the show. I think your name's John. What's your name, man? Is there
It's actually Rachel.
Yay! Well, that really made me look good. Rachel, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I am doing well. I thought I'd help you out here and give you a call.
You see, I appreciate that, Rachel. You heard me dying on my feet there. I could, you know, there must be an entanglement.
You weren't dying.
Yeah, there must be an entanglement going on here. But I've been talking about Article 13 today. I've been ranting about all sorts of things. What do you want to talk about, Rachel?
Well, I want to make sure I understand it. So does it say that you can't quote people, you can't share links, you can't cite people? Is that what it says?
Basically, yes. And if it's basically Facebook, they're the ones that would have to pay a tax to the various companies for people to share their links. But then there's also, if you've got an independent kind of blog, a website, often you'll try and quote, or you will quote an article or something like that. That will be gone. That's copyrighted material. And you're going to have to seek licenses from anyone or any corporation that you use content from. So it's really before
if you decide to write a book, you can't cite who you're getting the information from. You can't quote people. If you wrote like a book that I am holding this book in my hand, is that the next thing? Publishers are going to get in trouble because you wrote a book and you actually cited someone and you have footnotes?
You see, this is, I think, the kind of thing where YouTube in particular, other protesters, activists have been saying, you know, this is a solution that you've come up with that doesn't fix the problem, because there's things like you're talking about there, and there are occasions when you can use copyrighted material, but of course, they've come up with this horrible new kind of legislation that goes after everything. And it puts all of the onus onto YouTube, onto Twitter, onto the actual platforms themselves, which means that they're going to have to really be careful what they put on their websites. And that's why I've been talking about, and you'll hear other people talking about upload filters. And these filters are going to be the new thing. And basically it's going to, anything you upload, if it recognizes anything, and think of how much information out there is copyrighted, it's impossible for them to put this into place, Rachel.
But you know, it's not even so much copyright. I found you because someone else talked about you. I found other information because people share their link. If I had something, I'd want people to share it so they'd find me and bring their audience to me too.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And they say this will cut down, of course, fake news comes into the equation, because a lot of the stuff that's used, a lot of the stock footage that people use, they analyse it and things, that they won't be able to do that anymore. You won't be able to watch anyone breaking down a mainstream news report anymore, because theoretically they'll have to have gone to CNN or Sky News or BBC, and they'll have to have the correct licence in place. And again, this is where they can price people in the independent media out of the game, because we don't have 5-6 figures to pay every single company that we might want to pay for our news from if we want to use it in stories, Rachel. So this is why, you know, it really is going to change the shape of things. And before too long, it could just be the big companies on there. And that's exactly the way they want it, isn't it?
Well, I'm beginning to believe the line that goes, if Jesus don't come back soon, he's going to owe Sodom and Gomorrah an apology.
You know, I've said to Bill Bean, I've said to Joe Joseph on many an occasion as well, where is that line? I keep on hearing how we win in the end. The good guys win. Jesus comes back, but where is that line? How far do things have to go? Because I don't know about you, Rachel. Things are hitting that peak level of bizarre right now. I don't know how much further we can go before something has to happen.
Now, I'm in my mid-50s, and I never, when I was a girl, would have ever dreamed that the world would have been like this when I was older. Ever.
No, I mean, that means you've lived pre-internet age. And I mean, I remember pre-internet as well. And you think of the young ones today, Rachel, I mean, they know no different. The internet's just a way of life from very, very early on. Earlier and earlier now. And it's totally different to be alive today and be growing up today than it was just even when you were growing up and when I was growing up.
Yeah, I remember having to go to encyclopedia if I needed to write a report for school.
Exactly. You'd have to actually physically go to a library. Sometimes I actually wonder, how did we ever get news? Yeah, we would have the news report a couple of times a day, but then did we have to wait like a full day for the next update? What did we do in between times? And it's even hard to remember what it was like, how we used to get our information then to how we get our information now. It's changed so much.
Well, and I don't even watch the news anymore because it's giving me a heart attack, and I call them the loony left liberal nut job.
No, you're right. You're right. And I used to think I had to watch the news, Rachel, because I was trying to decode it, try to make sense of the agendas they were pushing. But it takes its toll. And even when you're watching programming, you think you're smarter than it, you think you're better than it, so it's not going to take an effect on you, right? But it does. Psychologically, subconsciously as well. You might not notice it, but it really does. It weighs down on you. And it's that fear vibration. That's what they're trying to generate all of the time. And even when you are aware of it, sitting watching it, it can still take its toll. So I'm like you. I rarely dip my toe into the mainstream now. I'll watch the relevant clips that I think I might need to do, but that's about it.
Well, do you remember the old TV show Lost in Space?
Oh, yeah. Dr. Smith?
Well, when I hear these liberals talking, I think of the robot that says, this does not compute, this does not compute.
I exactly get where you're coming from. Well, Rachel, I'm going to let you get back to your day. I'm going to jump into some other story.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you, because honestly, I thought nobody was going to phone in. I wasn't feeling the love at all, so you've made my day, Rachel. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Rachel. See, there you go, folks. I don't bite. See, I'm not that bad. I'm quite a kind of a hospitable host when you call in. I'm not one of these combative kind of hosts that wants to argue with anyone. Only on some topics. I'm only joking, folks. I'm only joking. But no, before we got the caller there, I was talking about how even over here in the UK, we're still pushing the Russian narrative. Don't expect that to change anytime soon. But that's all I'm going to say on that. Russia are going to be to blame for the near future. They are the new boogeyman. And we're even seeing Donald Trump today. I think he was telling the Russians to get out of Venezuela. Here, Donald Trump, here's an idea. Why don't you get out of Venezuela? Why don't you just leave Venezuelans to decide what's happening in Venezuela? Just saying. Just saying. But that's why I don't get into politics, folks, because they're all equally corrupt. They are all equally criminal, all equally controlled. Call it the deep state, call it the cabal, call it what you will. There's a hidden hand. And if you think Donald Trump's got all the power, if you think Theresa May's got all the power, if you think that clown Juncker's got all of the power, you've got another thing coming. It's a whole different kind of dark, occult layers, multiple layers of power that goes on behind the curtain. These people are just front men and women. That's all they are. They come and go, but the agendas remain the same. And that's how you know they're all coming from the same, or they're all singing from the same hymn sheet. So with that said, let me look up our next story we can dip our toe into tonight. I found this quite interesting. This gets us into the world of tech and AI. And yeah, this is a weird one. Talk about virtual reality on the show here from time to time. Been speaking about it a lot in terms of Google Stadia that was announced recently. Now, Google Stadia isn't virtual reality, the kind of thing that we talk about on here or speculate on here. Right now, it's just a gaming platform where people can plug in and, they play the game on the cloud, as opposed to you having the game on your machine. You stream it, okay? I think my speculation in the future is this is where we'll plug in with the VR. It'll be one of these Google-based or Google Cloud servers, and that'll take us away to a second world, utopia, whatever you want to call it, okay? That's where we'll all meet up in this second kind of virtual realm. So this story here talks about how VR headsets should have brain interfaces. Now, there's a big difference between virtual reality and going to the brain interface. The brain interface chips are nothing actually new. However, this is the kind of technology that we're talking about when it comes to plugging into the hive mind. Plugging into that system with a all-powered, all smart, all-seeing, miracle-working AI, the algorithm, will be connected to us all. Now, this story, this is talking about taking us from VR, which is something you would see once you put the headset on. Take the headset off, you're out of it again, right? Not so simple when you start incorporating brain chips. But it says here, virtual reality headsets are already pretty good at fooling our eyes and ears into thinking we're in another world. And soon we might be able to navigate that world with our thoughts alone. Now, how many times have we heard about this kind of thought-reading technology in recent weeks even here on the show? We're talking about Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook with the thought-reading technology, remember? So you wouldn't have to type all your messages. Oh, how convenient, Mark. Yes, oh, nice and cute and cozy, whatever. But it says here, speaking at this year's Game Developers Conference in San Francisco, Mike Abinder, in-house psychologist and researcher for game developer and distributor Valve, gave a talk on the exciting possibilities of adding brain-computer interfaces to VR headsets. I mean, what we're going to do is just plug in some kind of nanotechnology into the top of our spine or something. That's you plugged in. What the hell? It says here, the idea is to add non-invasive electroencephalogram, EEG. Yeah, obviously butchered that pronunciation, folks. And this is sensors to the inside of existing VR headsets. EEG readers detect the electrical signals firing in the brain and turn them into data points. And by analysing that data, according to Abinder, game developers could make games that respond differently depending on whether you're excited, happy, sad, or bored. Quote, so think about adaptive enemies. What kinds of animals do you like playing against in gaming? Abinder said, as quoted by VentureBeat. If we knew the answers to these questions, you could have the game give you more of a challenging time and less of the boring time. Game design could become almost perfectly tailored to the person wearing the VR headset, or even recreate a perfect representation of you inside a virtual world. Your avatar could perfectly mimic your current state of mind or mood. All of a sudden, we start to become able to assess how you're responding to various elements in the game. You see how the AI is always learning, folks? See how you think you're taking part in a game and it's tailoring it all to your needs, all of your desires, but there it is there. All of a sudden, we start becoming able to assess how you're responding to various elements in the game. You see, no, we don't need kind of a brain reading technology in our games. And I get this isn't the actual neural lace way that they're going about it. They're talking about just reading how the electrical signals fire off. And because they have mapped the brain so well, they literally know what each of those neural pathways means we're thinking. That's some right spooky sci-fi Wi-Fi woo stuff going on right there, wouldn't you agree? That's the world we're living in now. And it is. It sounds more and more like a sci-fi movie every time we talk about this. Why? Because literally they're taking into a sci-fi movie future. But we've got a wireless caller on the line. I think it's California. We're going to area code 831. Welcome to the Kev Baker Show, and you are on the air.
That's right. My name's Jimmy. I'm calling in on the call-in line, boy.
Oh, how's it going, Jimmy Jeans? What's happening, man?
Hey, I'm down in San Jose, and I don't have a good enough connection to call you on Skype, so I heard you talking about interesting stuff, so I thought I'd give you a shout.
Dude, it's much appreciated. I hope you can hang for the final segment of the show.
I can, because I'm driving home. I'm all done for the day, and the rain has finally cleared out, Kev. I mean, it's been pouring rain here it's still raining.
Still raining?
Still.
Well, you know,
yeah,
I had Ella on for the first hour of the show, which was quite good. We were talking Article 13. The more I looked into Article 13, the more I looked into it today, Jimmy, the more I can see how this will have a serious impact on all of us. The sharing of information, you know, it's never going to be the same again. And literally, basically charging, you know, wanting to put a tax on the sharing of information. What is that all about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really the goal. Honestly, I honestly don't think they care about the information. What they care about is the money. And, you know, they've been losing out for so many years that they think they've figured out a way to get their money back and get back in control. You know, that was the whole thing. That's why we didn't see a lot of the really interesting people popping out, because there was always some gatekeeper keeping us from seeing any of these interesting people, you know. And so because the gates were removed on the internet, everybody got to get, you know, if you wanted to be on TV, you could be. If you wanted to be a musician, you could be. You could do anything you wanted to do on the internet, you know. And now it's being reduced down to the money. And when it gets down to the money,
we'll be back. We'll be right back.
This is the Kev Baker Show.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Kev Baker, and we're moving into the final part of today's Kev Baker Show, right here on TFRlive.com. Truth Frequency Radio, where silence is consent. And there is no shutting us up on here, coming up right after this show. You don't want to miss this one, because I'm so proud of her. I've got a little tear in my eye. You know, you see people coming of age. And I feel a bit left out, really, because my sister Lucky is now serving time at the hands of Jack Dorsey in the Twitter jail. So I want all of you out there to raise a glass, give her a big round of applause to our sister Lucky, because in this age of digital information warfare, you're not alive until you spent some time in social media jail. That being said, Kev Baker here never spent one day in social media jail. Yes, okay, I shill for Zuckerberg. I shill for big tech. I do actually shill for big tech. Oh, wait, hang on a minute. No, I'm only joking, folks. But no, Lucky, she has been kicked off of Twitter. You'll need to tune in to find out more after the break. So with that said, don't expect Lucky to be the last. Today it's Lucky. Yeah, and if you don't speak up for Lucky, well, let that be on you. And tomorrow might be Kev Baker, and if you don't speak up for Kev Baker, well, that's on you. But then when it comes to being you, surely can't expect any of us to speak up for you. So then, with that little dramatic, hyperbolic entrance into the final part of today's proceedings, let me just remind myself and everyone out there that not only do we have Jimmy Jeans on the line, we also have, calling in all the way from the USA, see how that rhymes, Regla Girl. How's it going, Regla?
Hi, buddy.
How you doing? How you doing? You're on with me. You're on with Crazy Jimmy. What do you want to get into today?
Well, I wanted to talk about a little something, and maybe it's a little crazy and maybe a little wacky, but it's just been on my mind today for some reason. I listened to some really great rebroadcasts last night and early into the morning of Beyond the Veil, which are some shows done by the owners of the network here, Chris and Cherise Shield. And there were some shows with also one of the great callers. He's also been a co-host here, Naysay, and they were talking about this phenomena, or this thing with, actually, it's not just a phenomena. There was Nelson Mandela, and when he passed, they were talking about his passing, and Naysay had mentioned something that I had not remembered, which was that when he passed, they had put his body on ice. Did you know that, Kev? That they had put his body on ice for 8 months. Did you remember that? I know, I had forgotten that too. But they were talking about it in conjunction with the cycles of the moon, which, back a while ago, I remember when I was a kid, it was 28 days. And when you would look that up on Google, because that's the way we look up information now. When I was a kid, I used to go to the library, or a bookstore and stuff. And even back, like, say, 6 years ago, say, I'd go on my computer and I would Google something. I can tell you that I would find different information when I would Google cycles of the moon 6 years ago when I did it. I would get different information than I did now. Now, for now, we can just say that's hearsay. Regular girl, what I say is hearsay. Okay, leave it at that. Anyway, when I was a kid and I would cycles of the moon, and I'm a woman, so that's more, that's my real life. That's been a big part of my life and here's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about menstruation. Now, we live in a world where we're talking gender fluidity and freely we talk about these things, and yet, when I even go to speak about that, I get a little kind of funny about it. Is that okay, Kev, that I talk about menstruation?
Absolutely,
here?
absolutely. Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Because all the time,
there is a kind of little funniness about that. I even feel about that. It isn't that kind of funny? And I want to say, and that's why I decided to call that. Interestingly enough, as we talk about information, it's kind of interesting to me that on one hand, we have this opening of a door or a portal where there's this free flow of information. And at the same time, interestingly enough, there's been a kind of hiding of information, as there has been with this cycles of the moon. On one hand, there seems to be hidden information that has slipped by us in a way that there has been with this shifting of the cycles of the moon. It was as though for some of us, we woke up one day, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but, as though we woke up one day and somebody all of a sudden changed the cycles of the moon. Oh, all of a sudden, now it's 29 and a half days. No longer is it 28 days, which is very relevant for women especially. And all right, I'm not going to go out.
No, you're right, because the whole time I've been alive, the moon's been tied to the menstrual cycle, and you've got to think about it this way.
That's right.
We often hear about how this story or that story is, a distraction. You've got to, the way I look at it is that anything that's out there on the internet, in the media, any piece of information that people are talking about, in reality, all of it's a distraction from information that they're trying to keep hidden. So the more information that does come our way, not that it's not important, but it becomes easier then, Regla, for them to hide other things because people are overwhelmed with the amount of information that they do have their hands on.
Well, I got to just thinking about this thing, and it's pretty huge. It's like this, because here's when I was interviewed, because I was in a real marketing target for this group of women who are being sold not just abortion, because we were also being sold oral contraception. The target group for abortion, who were being sold abortion for that Roe versus Wade, we were also being sold oral contraception at the time. But I remember being told this. Now, I was one of the women who chose not to take oral contraception for my own personal reasons, but most of my friends did. So there were thousands of women who took these oral contraceptions, and here's what I was told. And there were probably, I would say, 5 or 6 times in my life because you had to kind of go to the gynecologist a number of times, for other reasons. When you're a young woman who's sexually active, which I certainly was, you were told this. They would say to you, both the nurse and the doctor at some point when they were trying to sell you these things, because they were asking me, like, well, how are you dealing with this? Because I wasn't married. They would say, by the way, one of the great side effects of these things is they make your period more regular. And now here's this other piece of this. They would say, and it really helps with the cramps because you deal with these horrible cramps and the mood swings. Now, there's two pieces to this. There's the cramps, but the regularity. Here, listen to what I just said. The regularity, they're going to regulate the menstrual cycle. The synthetic menstrual cycle is what they're going to start to regulate with thousands of women who then did take these oral contraceptions. And then this other piece about the moon, which maybe none of us have started to think about, but also the mood. Now, didn't we then experience the onslaught of mood disorders in people in the oncoming years, in the 30 to 40 years that followed, that maybe none of us pieced together with oral contraception? Nobody linked it to that. We didn't follow a thread to that. And then I want to say one more thing, because I came from a religious background and I had a sort of spiritual journey that wasn't linked to the Bible or the studies of the Bible. But recently, I've started to study it. And interestingly enough, this week, there's a chapter in Mark, and there's a story where Jesus is like, it's one of his healing things, and he's like walking through the crowd, and it's like a real big crowd, right? And so he's being pressed like with all these people. In fact, those are the words that they use. And in the crowd, there's this woman, and she's dealing with bleeding. And so someone who's like one of these biblical scholars explains while I'm in this group of people studying this chapter this week, and they say that what they're talking about is her bleeding. And back then, just like today kind of, you're not really supposed to talk about this thing, the woman's bleeding, but that's what they're talking about in this story. And in the story, Jesus feels it, okay? And in the story, Jesus actually feels that, but he doesn't just feel it. He stops and he says, I feel her. See, Jesus apparently had a history where even back then, women were like lowlives. They were like lowlife people. And apparently in his ministry, he made a point of sticking up for women. I didn't know this, but he did. And even in this story, he makes a point that not only is he going to stick up for this woman, but he's going to talk about her bleeding. Get this. He's talking about her bleeding that people back then don't talk about. I'm just pointing this out, you see, that this is something that even in this age of information, when there's this free flowing of gender, we're going to talk about gender, we're going to talk about everything, and everything's cool, and we're going to talk about this, and we're going to talk about that. We're still a little hesitant to talk about menstruation and the cycles. Who is the most valuable human being? It's a woman who's bleeding because they can give birth. And yet we don't ever really talk about it quite like that, do we? I'm talking about it.
No, you're right there. And Jimmy, I'm going to bring you in here as well, Jimmy, because you host a show. And is it something that, even to this age, Jimmy, it's still quite taboo. It's still one of those subjects that, might make people feel uncomfortable. And Regla's got a great point. All the other kind of things that we're expected to just tolerate and accept and talk about. Yet this here, something that's gone on forever, part of the process of reproduction, and yet it's so taboo to talk about, Jimmy.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those subjects that is taboo to talk about, but it is a very lively subject just simply because the blood in and of itself has so much going on in it. For example, Jesus saying that he felt her through the blood is because that's why you see these mythical vampire type characters, the sucking of the blood and that is because there's energy to be had by the blood. There's a reason why you drink the red wine if you're a Catholic. It has to do with the blood. And the menstrual cycle is a very important cycle. And one of the things that I've learned is that if you have a group of women together, their cycles usually kind of all sort of go together. They kind of coincide. At the same time, they adjust.
Yeah, I've heard that as
But
well, man. It's
what's
like it's like it all kind of syncs up. That they end up synchronized.
Exactly. And so, there's a lot of sacred ritual around the menstrual cycle.
I'll tell you what's interesting as well, Jimmy.
I know,
The fact that Regla brings up the fact that, I've not looked into moon cycles, so I'd be lying if I said I had, but the moon cycle, if that's increased, the days and that, quite an interesting thought that perhaps all of the contraceptives that people have taken over the years was to regulate that 28-day cycle that, was tied to the moon's 28-day cycle. But if that lunar cycle's changing, then perhaps they have had to step in and intervene and, regulate that. A really interesting thought. I've not heard that been put out there before, dude. We talk about vaccines a lot. We talk about the vaccines a lot, that they're definitely a Trojan horse, but, maybe we haven't. And that's not to say that definitely there's something going on with these contraceptives, Jimmy, but there's definitely worthy to look into it.
It definitely is, and Macy had brought some stuff to the table around this moon thing a couple of years ago, and he was running around trying to get people to notice it, but nobody really got into it with him. I did a couple of time slots with him on my show about it, and he noticed that the moon cycle wasn't right. And he noticed that the length of days was wrong, and that the equinox and solstice were wrong, and that something was different. And, when he pointed me to the information and I looked at it, I could see that he was clearly correct. Something definitely was different. It's just a matter of not really knowing what that was, but it's an interesting point to bring up in regards to this, the contraceptives, because, most of the girlfriends that I've had in my life, they were on contraceptives of one form or another. The women that I know that were on contraceptives and got off of them were psychologically happier in a lot of respects. But the mood swings were a little bit more extreme. So I don't know if the contraceptive, I'm sure if we looked into the contraceptive that's commonly taken, like we do in the vaccine, I'm sure we'd find a whole bunch of stuff in there that we didn't know was there before.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Regla, any final thoughts before I let you get back to listening in? Because that was a really good call. That really is something that I've not thought about before anyway.
Yeah, I can just tell you that I kept looping the show where Nase was talking to Chris and Cherie about this, his insights regarding the cycles of the moon. And thank you for taking the call.
No,
yes.
Absolutely, Regla. Anytime you call in. And that show that Regla was talking about there, Jimmy, certainly one I'll have to go and try and find and listen to that. The moon, it's always fascinated me, dude. I'm going to be having David Icke on here on the 8th of April. He's wrote books about the moon. There's so many things about that. And
yeah.
And even Brendan, my good friend from the Rochester Institute of Technology, even he was left shaking his head when I was pointing out how weird it is, the perfection of that moon. You see how it's just the right size and just the right distance from the sun for it to produce that glorious effect when there's the solar eclipse. So many different things tied to that moon that has so many qualities that make you think to yourself, is that really a random object? I don't know, Jimmy. It's almost as if life on this planet wouldn't be happening without that moon there.
At least as we know it. I mean, one of my happy visuals is the concept that the moon is actually a surveillance ship that's here to observe the the activities going on the earth, and there's some dude sitting in there behind some big screen inside the hollow moon, just watching everything.
I'm with you, dude. I'm with you. I honestly think, what a brilliant way, though, if you were kind of terraforming a planet and you had to create an artificial moon that was going to be responsible for, just keeping the tides just perfect so that people can live here and regulating women's menstrual cycles and things like that, then what better way to position yourselves than to park up your command center in said artificial moon that you're going to have to put in orbit around the planet anyway. It gives you 360-degree travel and access all the way around. Perfect place to watch things progress in. I'm with you, Jimmy. The romantic side of me, the sci-fi side of me says that that's where whoever it was that decided this was the place to start things off, that's where they hung out.
Yeah, I mean, it is a romantic vision of it, but hey, we can be romantic because it's a Kev Baker show.
Exactly, dude. Exactly. People expect nothing less of Kev Baker. I shove on my captain of the douche canoe hat towards the end of every show, and I take us on a journey of a sea called speculation, James.
That's some heavy water there, Kev. But I'll tell you this. Whenever I listen to Kev Baker Show, I got to pull on my thinking cap and pull it on tight because, man, some of the shows that have gone on here, dude, you are the quantum initiator, brother.
Oh, don't get me going.
You stimulate.
Don't get me going quantum,
you stimulate
Jimmy.
The brain.
I've been.
Yeah.
I've had my. From time to time how I like to go and start learning stuff and things. I've been diving down a lot of quantum rabbit holes lately. A lot of new things coming together. A lot of new theories out there I've been looking into. And what smacks me about the face when I'm looking into them, and it's usually quantum related, quantum gravity, quantum fields. I'm not well versed enough to parrot some of the information that I've heard yet. And notice I admit to you that I'll be parroting the information. Can't say I fully understand all of it, but it ties in with everything we talk about here on the show and with the network and with entanglements and with the way that the universe works as opposed to the way we're told it works. We're told pretty much it's physical, this universe. It's all nuts and bolts and you go down to that particle level, but really is everything made up of particles? Because what are particles made up of? Well, when you really boil it down to that quantum level, there's a good chance particles themselves are just made up of waves, different fields. And this is where we're going to be going with this. In the near future, I've been tickling all of you out there with the fact I'm going to be talking about Schrodinger's kittens at some point this week. I think we'll leave that for tomorrow. I think we'll go a bit of a sci-fi, cryptozoology, weird news field tomorrow because it's just us again, folks. This week I took off from the guests. Sometimes we overload on the guests, and I know there's people out there, and me included, I like to just hang out with all of you. So we've been doing a lot of that this week. We had Ella coming in today to guest co-host. We've had Jimmy, we've had Scott. Tomorrow, I don't know who's going to show up, but we're going to get into Schrodinger's kittens. And of course, Schrodinger and that dead and alive cat, that's where a lot of people's interest in quantum mechanics is born out of. Well, what if we're to take it a whole new couple of layers and we throw in friends and kittens and, oh man, what if everything we thought about quantum isn't even real? Oh, yes, we're going to get right into that tomorrow, James.
Yeah, and what's cool too is like, I've learned over the years that, I thought I would read a book and then I would think I understood the book. I think I understood everything in it. And then I go read the book again 10 years later. And because I've advanced in my ability to understand and my lexicon of understanding has progressed from where I was when I read the book, when I read the book the second time, I see a whole different book. And that's what's so great about your show because, you may just be dipping into that information right now and it's giving you a lexicon able to have a discussion or to communicate about it or even speculate or put your ideas out there. And then once you start that action, as you go down the road, you come back to this document 5 years from now and you read it again and you'll go, wow, you know, I missed this thing just because I didn't know about this. You know, it's just really cool, man. And that's why I love the Kim Baker Show. And that's why even when I'm driving home in bad traffic in the rain, I got to call in, brother.
Yeah.
Like I said, you are the quantum initiator.
Yes, indeed. And well, on that note, I've got one story. I'm just going to bring it up just now. Let me bring it up here. Yeah, obviously, over the years, you know, quite infamous for talking about a certain quantum computing company called D-Wave. Often like to poke fun at my friend Geordie Rose on here. And anytime something new comes out of D-Wave, I like to get it out there, get people at least aware of what's going on. And when it comes to D-Wave, remember, we speculate at the power of this thing and its potential to run lifelike simulations. You know, real-time, real-world simulations where each of us is represented as a node. You can look to the program and the paper out of Purdue University called the Sentient World Simulation. And we've often talked about the fact that if there is one machine in the world where the Sentient World Simulation is alive and well, it's going to be the D-Wave. Now, they recently just started talking about their new model of D-Wave, which is 5,000 qubits and exponentially more powerful than the 2048 model that they've got out now. But something interesting happened the other day, and I think it's really important. And it shows just how big a role D-Wave and this quantum computer is going to play in world governance, in this new world order system that we're talking about, a system that really is dictated by and driven by algorithm. Because here from D-Wave's own website, this is their own press release, not me speculating, not me reading into things 2 and 2 getting 5 or 6. D-Wave expands Leap quantum cloud service and application environment to Europe and Japan. Now take a note of that term, the Leap Quantum Cloud. It says here that the leader in quantum computing systems, D-Wave Software and Services, today announced the geographic expansion of its Leap Quantum Cloud service, which includes access to the D-Wave 2000Q system and its quantum application environment. Get this, listen to the number. The 33 new countries include all 28 member states of the European Union, Japan, Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, and Switzerland. Now, Leap is the only cloud-based service to provide real-time access to a live quantum computer, as well as open-source development tools, interactive demos, educational resources, and cloud-based articles. Developers, researchers, and businesses around the world can now access Leap and start building applications both free and with paid plans. The Sentient World Simulation lives. We'll be back tomorrow on the Kev Baker Show. Don't go anywhere.